So this meeting is being recorded. So we're going to talk about sessions and cookies today. We have a little application here that I'll kind of walk you through a little bit, and where we're actually going to implement Rails sessions. And I'm also going to show you, and I'm not telling you should do this, but I'm going to show you how you can get around the paywall when you're on like websites like New York Times that asks you to, subscribe. Again, I'm not telling you should do this, but this is all done via cookies, and it's kind of interesting. So let's start by taking a look at our application real quick. So what we have here is like a little trivia game application. And we have a couple of deliverables. We really only have two actually, that we want to be able to fix today. So one of them is we want to add a feature that displays the numbers of correct answers that we've gotten so far. And we want to like show that up here. And we want to make sure that this should be specific to a user, right? I go to this website, I put in a couple of answers, I get them right or wrong. This correct number up here should be specific to me. This has nothing to do like with anybody else that's playing this game. I want to know how many I got correct. And so we want to show that number up there. And then the second deliverable that we have is we want to add a message that tells the user whether they got the answer correct or incorrect. Right after we submit our answer, we want to have some kind of message like, "Oh, good job," or "Try again." So those are our two deliverables, and we're going to use sessions in order to make some of this work. What she say? And then it tells you which Harry Potter house Disney character belongs to. Yeah. The questions here, I did not create these questions. Some of them are kind of weird. But we do have the answers. If we don't know what the answer is, they're like totally random. So we can always cheat a little bit and check out the answers. Okay, so let's actually start by going to New York Times and tricking them a little bit. Okay, so what New York Times does is that we can go to an article, right? We can kind of scroll through here. We can read the article, everything's good. But, oh, we are already getting the paywall. I guess I must have, looked at an article previously. So you get a paywall after you read when you go to your second article. So you are able to read the first article, but the second article is going to have a paywall on it. Same, if I click on any of these articles right here, I can see that once I start scrolling and the page loads, I can like read it super quickly. But the paywall will pop up eventually and should prevent me from reading this article.
This is a coronavirus one, which is free. Not behind
nice.
the paywall.
Okay, got it. Let's check out some other ones. That's a good point. Yeah, some of them I guess might be free. Here we go. So I can't read this right here. All right, so the way that New York Times does this, and a lot of other sites as well, is via something called cookies. Cookies are a way to keep track of user data, and specifically to one particular user or one particular browser. And it makes it possible for applications to, in this case, to figure out if we've already read one article, and if this is our second article and we need a paywall on it. So what we can do is we can go into our Chrome DevTools. We can go to our application tab, make this a little bit bigger. And then we can take a look at the cookies that we have for all of our different sites that we visited. Right, so by the way, there are also like extensions that you can get for Chrome that will allow you to see your cookies a little bit more easily, but this is good enough for us right here. So we can see that we have cookies from this particular domain, New York Times. One thing about cookies is there are actually two types of cookies. And the one type of cookie that we'll talk about today is the cookie that's specific to one site, to one domain. So we have cookies set for New York Times. If we go to a different site, if we go to google.com, those cookies wouldn't mean anything to that domain. It only means something to the New York Times domain. So we have all of these cookies right here. A lot of them we probably don't really care about, but what we can do is we can right click on this and we can say, go ahead and clear all of my cookies here for New York Times. And what that's going to do for us, if we refresh our page, it's going to make it possible for us to actually read the article, right? So this is essentially as like we're pretending to be like a first-time user, right? That doesn't have any cookies set yet. And once we go visit another page, want to read another article, at that point we will get the paywall again, because right now, like New York Times has set certain cookies. I don't exactly know which one is the one that will prevent us from reading the articles, but one of these cookies makes sure that we are only able to read like one. I don't know if it's like one a day or one a week or something like that. So that is one way that you can get around paywalls sometimes. So again, cookies are a way to keep track of data that is particular to a user. So cookies are essentially saving pieces of information, like small pieces of information, on a user's computer, and make it possible for a site to remember certain things about you. A lot of times these are good things. These can also be used for, not so great things. If you think about ads that you're seeing all over the web, those are like third-party cookies. Maybe that's something that you might think is like breaching your privacy in to some extent. But a lot of cookies that we have on the web are meant to be good, right? They save your session when you log into a website, right? You log into a website once, you come back to it, and you're still logged in. You don't want to have to re-log in. Like, that's a bad user experience. Cookies make it possible for us to save this kind of information. They also make it possible for us to save preferences. Say we go to a site and we change the language to English or to whatever other language we want to read the site in. These are all preferences that a website can save via a cookie on your computer. So those are the good kinds of cookies that we're going to be taking a look at. We'll be doing authentication also on Monday, and yeah, those are like the basics of cookies. Are there any questions here so far?
Might be tangential, but like Chrome incognito mode, for example, I think it just dumps the cookies after you close the session, correct?
Yeah. So in incognito mode, if we open up, so this is another way that we can go about reading these kinds of articles. Usually, if we were to go here, if we then like go to a different article, let's actually take a look at the cookies here if they're being set. So we got our cookies here. So if we browse around and go to a different article, let's try that out. And we scroll, unless it's like a free article. No, we get our little pop-up. But if we create like a new incognito session, then we should be back to normal. So should be able to read this now. Yeah. So essentially, the incognito will prevent you from, or will prevent the site from being able to save those cookies from one session to the next. Any other questions, comments? All right, Cool. So let's do a little bit of coding. We have these two deliverables that we want to fulfill. Let me show you the application that we have. We actually, like, this is a pretty simple application. We only have one view file. We have some layouts here that we don't really care about, but the one view file that we have is the file that shows us the question, the possible answers, and our little submit button here. And then at the very top, we have a number for the correct answers that we've gotten so far. And we're not going to go too much into the form here. We really only care about, how do we get our deliverables finished. And so our controller is also not super big. And let me actually go to the routes real quick first. So we really only have this one main route that will give us a random question that will take us to our responses.new. And in our controller, we have a couple of methods here, defining a question, defining a response. We're not going to worry about the actual functionality of this too much. We're just going to trust that it works. But this create right here, which actually creates the which checks if an answer was correct or not, which is run when we hit our submit button. This is a particular action that we're going to be working in, because this is where we need to make sure that we somehow keep track of the number of correct answers that we've gotten so far. So right now, the way that things are working, if I answer this question and I hit submit, one thing that I have here in my create is I have this variable called number correct, right? At number correct is equal to 0. And whenever I get, so this is my conditional here for, did I get the answer correct or not? Whenever I get a correct answer, I am taking this number correct and I'm adding 1 to it. And right now, all I'm doing here is I'm just printing out this number correct. So we can see if we kind of scroll through our, and this is a little hard to see. If we scroll through our responses here, if we click one of these answers and we take a look at our requests that we make, we can see this little 0 here, right? So this 0 means that I got the question wrong, but we're printing out this correct number.
How would you get it to print a continuous 0 until you finally get one right?
So that's actually kind of the problem. So I can keep answering questions until I get a question right, and then the only thing that will change about my put statement is, in this case, I got the question right, is that I will print out a 1. The problem though is that, because if you remember that HTTP requests are stateless, from one request to the next request, we're not able to save any kind of information. So whenever we hit our create action, we're going to start at 0 again. And if we get the answer correct, we increment it by 1, but that doesn't really mean anything to us for the next request. So this is just a one request type of thing. We hit our submit button, we print out our correct number, which is either 1 or 0. And then we redirect the user to a different page.
The answer to this one is calm.
What's that?
The answer to this one is calm.
Okay, cool, thanks. Does that answer your question, Ashley? The
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is something important to remember, that the HTTP requests that we make, whenever we hit our submit button and we redirect our user somewhere else, we're not able to save this information from one request to the next. You've already seen Flash, which will make it possible for us to keep information around for one extra request. But that's still not enough for us. We want some kind of way to track the overall correct answers so far. If we've gotten 5 or 10 or 20 answers correct, we want to keep track of that. The way that we can do that in Rails is via sessions. And sessions, just as Flash, comes with Rails, comes built in with Rails. So there's nothing else that we need to set up in order to be able to use sessions. So instead of having this number correct variable here, we're going to use something called a session hash. A session hash might look really similar, look really familiar to you. It looks just like a Flash hash, and it is pretty much the same, except that the functionality itself is a little bit different, but is just as much a hash as it is our Flash number, as our Flash hash is. So let's create this session hash, and let's create a new key called number correct, and we're going to set that equal to a value starting out with 0. And we'll talk a little bit about, that there are a couple of problems that we run into here as well if we just kind of set it to 0. And then whenever we get a number correct, we want to make sure that we update our session hash, right? So this session number correct key, we want to increment that by 1. So this is our
question.
Yeah.
Sorry. For using Flash, since it does only stick around for 1, if you were to add to that if statement like else, just add number correct and flash that, since that would keep the number the same, would that work?
So essentially you're trying to like get the previous Flash value and then increment that by 1?
Yeah.
Or is that, yeah. Yeah, so hypothetically, we could do that, but the problem with that is once we refresh our page, we are not actually going back to this create action. So we would have to,
Sorry, I forgot
right?
about refreshing the page.
Yeah, so or we go to even to a different page. So we're gonna actually run into into a lot of trouble. We will have to fix a lot of things all over the place in order to make that work. Technically, I feel like it should be possible, but it would require a lot of work. But that's a really good.
More difficult than using.
Yeah, definitely more difficult than using sessions. But that's an interesting thought, and we could probably fudge with some stuff a little bit to kind of get it to have similar functionality.
Okay, cool. Sorry for the tangent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's all good. But because we have the ability in Rails to use sessions, which sessions are pretty much exactly what we need in this case. Sessions allow us to keep information, to track information from even after a page refresh, even after we go to a different page and we come back to this page, we're able to track user information from one request to the next. And does someone know how Rails does sessions? How does Rails implement sessions?
With the session hash?
Yeah, and more specifically, how do we actually save this information on the user's computer?
With cookies.
With cookies, yeah, exactly. So the way that Rails creates this session for us, the ability to track that user information, is by saving it in a cookie, right? And we'll take a look at what that looks like as well. Let's kind of finish up some of this code real quick. So whenever we get a correct answer, we want to make sure that we take our session hash, so our number correct. I'm having some trouble with this creating a new line. It's kind of weird in this lab. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take my previous session value, and I want to set my new session value to that previous session value plus 1. All right, so I'm just incrementing it by 1 each time.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. So I'm taking my previous value for the session hash. So if you think of let's Let's write this out. So if we have a session hash, right, it would be a hash with a key of number correct. That points to a value starting out at 0. Our key is what gets us a value, right? So if we say session number correct, that will print out 0 at first. And then the next time around when we get something correct, we are taking the previous value. So in our case, it was 0. We add 1 to it, and now our number correct for a session hash is 1, and so on, 2, 3, right? Whenever we get an answer correct, we increment it by 1. Awesome. So we have a small problem here before we even get to like displaying this correct number to the user. Whenever I hit this action, this create action, what happens on this line of code here, line 13?
You're setting the session number correct equal to 0. So even though, so every time you hit it, it's going to reset the session to 0.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever we get to this this create right here, we're updating our session number correct, and we're changing it back to 0. That seems a little counterintuitive, right? We're kind of back to square one. So there's something that we can use, and if you remember, I don't know if anybody remembers what this is called. Someone remember the term for this?
Or equals.
Yeah, it's called memoization, what we're doing here, right? So we're taking, it's kind of a funny word. We're taking memoization. We're essentially saying, hey, if this session number correct key already has a value in it, it doesn't matter what that value is, if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, you know, whatever it is, if it already has a value in it, go ahead and keep that value as is. If we do not have a value in for our session number correct key yet, then go ahead and set it to 0. So this pretty much means like the first time that we hit our create action, we are starting out at 0, and every subsequent time when we hit this particular line of code, when we already have a value in our session number correct, we're just going to keep that value and here increment it by 1. Questions about that?
So the setting of this is happening on the create, and a cookie, if we don't expire the cookie, then every time they come back, if they want to take the challenge again, we need to like remove either the cookie or reset this at some point in time?
Yeah, so if we want to, that's something we could do. We could have like we might have like a button here somewhere where it says like start over, right? So that's not something that we're gonna like build in today, but essentially you could just kind of set your number correct back to 0. So maybe we might have like we have like a reset, some kind of reset method, right? That will just kind of take our number correct and we'll just reset it back to 0.
Right. So with cookies, you kind of consider how you're going to get into it. How do you exit it based on next time that user comes around? You can't just think about the first time. You think about the hist over time too.
Could you say that one more time? You were cutting out just a little bit.
With using cookies, if it's storing data, we need to consider the first time the user is going to use it, or repeated time, and then a time after a user might be gone for a while. Like there's a sequence you need to think about in terms of refreshing, checking, refreshing. Is it current? Is it not current? Because like here, if we didn't have the reset, next time the user came around at some point, they would still end up with, 5. But that might not be what we want.
Right. Yeah. So
the life cycle, I guess.
Right. So maybe I agree with you, Brad. Maybe this is actually not the best example for what we might use these cookies for. But imagine if we had some kind of preferences on our site, like choosing a language or which particular view to show. those are things that we do actually want to keep around for as long as possible, or having a user log in. Maybe if we have a game like this and we actually want to be able to reset the value, you know, that's something that we want to think about. Like, we should have some kind of reset button. But if you think about the actual use cases that most people will use cookies for, it's more information that we tend to want to keep around as long as possible, so that we improve the user experience. I don't know if that kind of answers your question, Brad.
Mostly, it just shows you need to really think through what your use case is.
Yeah.
And then kind of map out what you're going to do from the start to the end, and and do you keep it around or do you expire it and all that? Okay.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Like beforehand, think about what the actual use case is, and then based on that, you can decide, you know, how you're going to write your code. For sure, it's a really good point. All right, cool. So we're using memorization here so that we can be sure that every time that we already have a value in our session hash for the number correct, we don't overwrite that value. And now let's go ahead. What's that?
I have a quick question about where like the data is stored when it's in a session. Like, since we're not communicating with a server, actually, it's not like from a table or anything, right? It's just, is it local to the session, or?
So this is where the cookie comes in. The data that we actually store, because the data is user specific, right? So I'm going to have a different number correct than all of you, right? You may have answered, you know, more questions. You may have gotten more correct. So for each user, in order to keep track of each user, so that you can go to this site, obviously this is on localhost, that's not going to work, but if we had this hosted and you would go to the site, your number correct value is going to be completely different from everybody else's. It might be the same because it's just a number, but the point is that we are storing all of our information about this particular user in a cookie specific to that user, right?
It's on that user's like local machine then?
Exactly, yeah. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
It's, yeah. And we'll take a look at the cookie in just a second as well, and what that looks like. So let's go ahead and let's kind of print out, actually, let's take this out. We're gonna finish the functionality a little bit, and then we'll take a look at what the cookie looks like. So if we want to be able to access, let's go to a view file real quick. We want to be able to access this like number correct right here in our view file, right? So this @numberCorrect variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method that will allow me to just kind of have this variable available to all of my actions in this controller. I'm going to use a before action here in order to make that happen. And let's call the method, we can really just call the method like number correct. It doesn't really matter what you call it. But all we want this method to do is we want to create a variable called number correct, and we want to pull the value of our session hash for this number correct out of that, out of the session hash, and put it into our number correct variable. You could hypothetically, what you could do, and I'm just kind of abstracting this away, which you should generally do when in your controllers. What we could also do is we could just kind of put our session number correct value directly in here. But as you know, we try to make sure that we keep all of that logic in our controller. So I'm going to create this method here, number correct, that just sets the value to my @numberCorrect variable. And then I'm going to just run my method before all of my other actions right here. I have all the define question, define response. They're all running before my other actions are ready. I'm just going to include the number correct as well. So whenever we need access to this @numberCorrect variable, we can do that because we are running this before any of our other actions. So right here, we are printing out our @numberCorrect, and we can now go in. We should be able to go in and hopefully answer some questions correctly. All right, everybody help me out here, answer these questions. Oh, does someone know this? No? Let's go to our seeds file.
Drew. I'm just guessing.
Drew? Okay, let's try it. Submit. We're not getting anything. Let's see. Worms. Where is the
Should we not
correct?
be saying 0? Incorrect so far.
It says bazooka is the answer.
Okay. Yeah, let's check. Let's see. Oh, our file didn't save. Sorry about that. What is going on here? Okay, there we go. So let's try that one more time. Okay, so it would have said 0, I think, if I'd saved my file. But I guess we got 2 correct already, so that's awesome. If we, how about this one here? Oh, didn't you say? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nice. Okay, we submit and we get another, our number increments by 1 every time. Now what we can do, and this is pretty cool, is we can refresh our page and our correct number is still 3, right? So every time that we refresh our page and we want to see, you know, another question, or we go to a different page and then we come back to this, our number correct here is saved. And where it is saved is in our cookies. If we go to our application tab and our cookies, we can take a look at this cookie that that Rails set for us, and it is called. It's usually called the name of the application. So in our case, it's Rails Quest _ session, and then the value looks like gibberish, but this is actually where. Sorry about that. I don't know if you can hear the sirens. But this is where we're storing all this information in an encrypted way so that we're not able to directly change it. But for each user that is going to visit our page, we're going to set a unique value for their particular cookie to save their particular, number of questions correct that they got correct. Yeah, so this is where all the magic happens. And now we're able to kind of keep track of how many questions a user got correct or wrong.
The cookie was created by the create action.
The cookie was created by Rails. Whenever we start using I actually believe that even if we don't use the session hash, that Rails sets our cookie. Let's try this. So first of all, one other thing that we can do now is, we have three questions correct, right? If we clear our cookies and we refresh our page, we can see that we are back to 0 or back to nothing. We don't have 0 here because we haven't set our number. We're not starting out with 0 until we hit the create action. But it means that we've cleared all of the information for that particular user. But also notice that, so I'm going to clear my cookies one more time, that if I refresh the page, I immediately get another session cookie right here, right? So even if I don't submit an answer yet, I believe Rails automatically sets the session cookie, and we just kind of add information to it whenever we need to use it.
So if you press the wrong answer for, I don't know, the AK47, then it'll say correct so far 0.
Yeah, let's try it. Does someone know what a wrong answer is? Let's see. Okay, there we
Nice.
go. Yeah. So we could probably improve the user experience there a little bit and kind of set it to 0 when we start out. But I don't think it's that big a deal. So, but we're able to track the information that a user leaves. This is just correct answers so far. But again, if we had preferences or some other information that the user that we want to keep track of for the user, we'd be able to do that in our session hash. One important thing to remember about this information that we're saving. We are not able to save any kind of data structure that isn't that can't be turned into a string. So if we try to save some kind of instance variable, some kind of instance of a response here. So if we said, let's go ahead and save the response in here, that would not be possible because we are not able to save like actual Ruby instances in a session hash. We're only able to save some kind of string values. So like we can, save strings, we can save numbers. And so if you have some kind of, if you're trying to save information about a user, you wouldn't save the user instance, but what you would save is probably the user ID, so that then later on you're able to find that user again. Okay, any other questions here?
So most of the cookie work is taking place in the controller, and only in this case, the new page or the new action is just sending the form to the create as a part of the normal process. And then the create is handling the cookie storage.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where we update, how many correct answers they've gotten. And again, we could use this session hash directly here in our view, but we're just going to try to abstract away most of our logic into our controller. So yeah, most of the work is happening right here and in like this method, I guess. All right, so we have one more deliverable that we want to fulfill, which is adding a message that kind of tells the user if they've gotten the last answer correct or not. And let's go ahead and try to use sessions for this as well. So if we take our, if the user has gotten the answer correct, right, we could maybe tell them something like, let's create another key here in our session hash. We'll call it message. And if the user got an answer correct, let's say, nice job. Cool. If I want to also set a message when the user gets the answer wrong, what would I need to add here to my if statement?
An else.
An else, yes, exactly.
And then wouldn't
So,
this be something you want to use Flash for instead?
yes, you're kind of giving it away, but yes, I'll show you like why we do not want to use sessions for this. Yeah, so if you have the hunch that sessions might not be the right tool for this, you are correct. But let's see what this looks like with sessions, and then let's refactor it. All right, so what I'm gonna add here is another method, and we'll call this, we'll just kind of use the same syntax that we used earlier. We'll create a message method here that we will run before all of our other actions. And then we're gonna save this message in our, whatever message we have in our session right here. And then in our new, save this. I don't know what's going on with this now. It's kind of weird. Okay, so in our new .html.erb, we want to show the user that they, this message that we just created. So let's create like a p tag or something. Okay, cool. And then we're gonna add some ERB tags here. And here we want to show our message to our user. So let's refresh our page. Let's answer one of the questions, hit submit. And I must be missing a step because I'm not seeing anything. Oh, I didn't save this. Okay, let's try that again. Submit. Awesome. So we get this like try again message. We submit another one. We keep getting this message. If we get something correct, we get the nice job message. The problem here that Alec pointed out already is that, you know, what happens now if we refresh our page? Because we're using sessions, this information is going to stick around, right? So we refresh our page and we still have this message right here. I feel like this is, you know, this is not great user experience, right? Because we haven't even answered a question. We refresh our page, we still get this message. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This is exactly the use case where we want to use Flash instead of sessions. Flash is something that will only stick around for one extra HTTP request. So let's turn this like session message into a Flash hash. And then let's see what our functionality looks like. So all I did here is switch over from a session hash to a Flash hash. And now if I answer something and I get my message, I refresh my page, that message is gone, right? Let's do this again. Try again, and I refresh my page, and the message that I'm showing to the user is gone. So Flash is always for something that can only last like one extra request, and then session, you want to use a session hash for things that are supposed to stick around for longer than that.
Could you be a little more specific when you define the message and then say like Flash success to confirm that, and then also take a Flash error so you can separate? Is there a benefit of doing that?
Sure, you could do that. Let's see, in this case, we want to show the user a particular, okay, let's see. I could think of a benefit I could think of is if you're showing this message to the user, maybe you want to have it formatted differently when it's like a, you know,
Yeah, like
they got something
CSS with
wrong.
like making it in red.
Exactly.
Then,
Exactly.
okay.
So in that case, we might want to add like, we'll have like a Flash error or something, and then we add like a class here of, you know, error, and then we'll show that to the user in red. Absolutely, that's a great point. We can totally do that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. This is, you know, usually a pretty short lecture, so that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. On Monday, we are going to go over authentication, actual authentication, so that you're able to implement that in your project. And I would suggest, if you haven't gotten to the authentication labs, like try working on that today and possibly over the weekend, and then you'll be all ready to go on Monday.
Are we going to have our project partners assigned here?
Yes. Let me stop recording real quick.